Hey guys, this is Anthony Morganti from anthonymorganti.com, and this is episode 20 of Photo Critiques. And in Photo Critiques, people send me in their best images, and I look at each image and give suggestions on how they can improve it, and hopefully all of us gain something that will help us with our photography. And today I'm pleased to critique the work of Jetmir Sejdia, and I really appreciate everyone allowing me to mispronounce your name. I'm really sorry, Jetmir. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it wrong. But Jetmir sent me 11 shots, and they're really cool, and I'm excited to critique his work. Before I do that, though, if you guys could do me a favor and subscribe, share, and like my YouTube videos, I'd really appreciate that. Okay, this first shot. This is the obligatory sunset photo. I always say that because we as photographers, we always like to photograph sunsets because they're a lot of fun to do. In this shot, Jetmir did a great job with complementary colors. Remember in previous episode I mentioned complementary colors are also called contrasting colors. On a traditional color wheel, they're at opposite ends. And in this case, we have orange and blue, and those are complementary colors. And they just add something to a photograph. When you could work complementary colors into a shot, it just adds that tension to the photograph. And it's really nice job here. Beautiful colors, this beautiful orange and this really nice shade of blue. And it just is a super nice shot. And complementary colors, if you're photographing a woman, she has a purple dress, give her a yellow flower to hold. Get reds and greens against, a red flower with the green leaves. Very strong images are created with complementary colors. And Jetmir did a great job with this. Now, I mentioned before, in landscapes, you typically like to have some strong foreground interest, unless your midground and your background are super interesting, and that's where you really want people's eyes to go. In this case, we have great color, but there's not much else working in the sky here. We don't have many interesting clouds, and there's really nothing in the midground here. I mean, this would be cool if we had like, an elephant walking through the surf or something, something unusual or something crazy like that. So there's nothing here except, breaking waves. There's no clouds up in here. So we have this nondescript beach that was almost in silhouette. What I would like Jetmir to do is work the scene. I mention this all the time. There's some rocks down here. Maybe he could have got down here and shot at the sunset and got these rocks in the foreground. Maybe there's some more interesting rocks somewhere along this shoreline too. He could have got into the scene. So that's what I would like in this shot. It's begging for something in the foreground to add interest to the shot. The final thing on this shot is the horizon is crooked. Whenever you guys are shooting any landscape, even if you're shooting a group portrait or something of people, make sure the horizon is perfectly straight. It's very important. It's just easy to overlook, but it's easy to do. And it's easy to, even if you screw up when you took the shot, you could correct it in post real easy. So make sure the horizon is straight. And that would be my suggestions on this shot. Now this shot, I love the composition. A lot of critics might say the sky is too blue. A lot of photographers do make very blue skies. I do. I oversaturate my skies, probably to a fault. Now, one thing a lot of people don't know, though, if you're at a very high altitude, which obviously this shot is at a very high altitude, the skies are very blue. You got a very blue sky. So in this case, the sky is very blue. He's up in the mountains. And I love the composition. The rolling hills, the snow is very nice. But there's two main things. The one thing is, I don't know if he could have got higher, because we're looking at these sheep broadside, and we really don't get an idea how big this flock of sheep is. And if he could have got up a little higher and just shot slightly down, we would have probably got a better sense of how many sheep were here and going across eating grass on this hill. The other thing is, the blacks are saturated black, and there's parts of the whites that are saturated white, and you want to avoid that. And it's real easy in Lightroom to find out what you got going as far as saturated blacks and saturated whites. As you go in the develop module, open up the right panel and open up your histogram. If your histogram's closed, just click on that triangle and it opens. Now this is the histogram. Over here we have the blacks, and on the far right we have the whites. Now if you see these triangles, just hover over that triangle and see how these parts of these clouds and parts of the snow get speckled red. That means that that part of the cloud is blown out white. There's no detail in it at all. You want to avoid that. You want to get the histogram to the left by adjusting, white and black point and adjusting your highlights and shadows. And I'm hesitant to do it. I've done it before where I've messed with people's shots, but I don't think it's right. I don't think I should. I've decided not to do that anymore. I don't think I should be adjusting other people's shots. Anyways, and as far as now the blacks is this triangle. If you hover over that, it turns blue where it's absolute black. There's no detail in that area at all. Parts of these sheep, parts of this cliff, or this, not a cliff, but you know what I'm saying. It's black. You want to avoid that. Now, a lot of people, on a side note, they email me and say, Tony, I don't know what it is, but all my pictures have this blue blotches in it, and I don't know what to do about it. Well, if that happens to you, that means you accidentally clicked on this arrow, and it will be there forever. I mean, you could go to any photo in your library, you could close down Lightroom and come back a year later, and everything will still have that blue that's absolute black, all right? So all you got to do though is go back up here and click on that and it goes away. Similarly, if you have red and you don't know where the red came from, it's because you accidentally clicked on that right triangle. So just click on it and it goes away. So on this one here is if he could have got a better perspective by getting a little higher. I'm not sure the terrain would allow him to do that, and avoid this clipping whites and the clipping blacks. And I think it would have been a much stronger image. This shot I like a lot. Now he doesn't have any foreground interest, but he doesn't need it because the rolling land is very, very pleasant to look at. The sky is interesting with these clouds, but the shadow is annoying the heck out of me. If this another one, if he could have came back maybe even 10 minutes later, that shadow would have been gone. Come back at a later time and try to get it where that shadow isn't there. But that is just ruining the shot, that shadow right there. Just if you could have, your eye could have just went with the meandering land, but this shadow flattens it out and it just doesn't look right. So, work the scene, I always say, and I often say come back at a different time of day or a different time of year. And this is one that's definitely a different time of day. And hopefully that shadow isn't there. Now, when you're in the woods, usually it's dark, light is very flat, and in this shot, I mean, what's the subject you're going to look at? Well, what am I supposed to be looking at? When a viewer is looking at a photograph, they want to see a distinct subject. They're looking at a sailboat, they're looking at a sunset, they're looking at sheep, they're looking at this, they're looking at that. They want to see the distinct subject. If there's not a distinct subject, they want to see something interesting, like a leading line, a meandering path that leads, to nowhere. Something that grabs their interest. In this case, it's lacking in those regards. So this is one where you just keep walking. You just keep walking and hope you find something interesting, more interesting to shoot. Now this is another one that it probably was like he had to get this shot now because these sheep, the flock came down here, the sheep herders here, they're getting water, they're eating a little bit, they're probably going to move on. But the problem is the time of day. The light is ultra harsh and it's shining this way, and it's casting these ugly shadows. The composition is beautiful though. It's a great composition. You see the line of sheep, but the way the light is, it's making the sheep, the backs of the sheep, very bright. Which the interesting subject, in my opinion, is the sheep herder here. But he doesn't stand out because the brightness of the backs of the sheep draw our attention to it, and we really see him as a secondary figure. So, obviously I could say, well, come back at a different time of day when the light's better, but the sheep probably wouldn't have been here. So Jetmir did the best he could with what he had. And you know, it's a great composition. He lined it up perfectly with the, like I mentioned, the leading line of the line of sheep, and this sheep herder's, you know, off to the side. He's not bullseyed right in the middle, and so he did the best he could. And he probably converted it to black and white because of the harsh light. It helped tone the light down a little bit. This I mentioned in a lot of videos. If you're going to get a tree and you're going to try to get the whole tree in, make sure you get the whole tree in. So part of it's cut out over here. And the problem, again, this is similar to the other shot, is the background is kind of the same color and shade as the tree. And it's not real distinct, so the tree isn't standing out. The bird's standing out nicely. This is one maybe you could have worked the scene and used a different lens and just shot this part of the tree with the bird in it. That would have been a great shot. I don't know if you have a lens that could do that, or if you would have been able to get close enough where this bird wouldn't have flew off. But it's just a tough scene to shoot because the background is a similar color to this tree. And the only suggestion about your composition I could make is to make sure you get the whole tree in. If you're going to shoot the whole tree, get the whole tree in. And other than that, work the scene and see if you could have got a different angle where there was something, at least a different shade, so this tree stood out better. This is a great composition with this bridge in this path, kind of a diagonal line, meandering diagonal line. Very nicely done. The black and white is kind of a very flat black and white, which is very popular, and it's very nice to print if you're going to print things, or if you're going to send it off to a magazine to get published. They like stuff like this because it prints nicely in a magazine. The only suggestion I can make to improve this image is you got part of this bridge cut out over here, and this is the subject right here, this bridge. So what I would have liked you to do is to just back up 3 feet. Yeah, used a 20mm lens as it was, or an 18-55 at 20mm. So maybe you could have just dialed it back to 18. Maybe you could just back up just a little bit and get this whole bridge in the shot. It's just cut off over here, and it would have been a stronger shot. This is another one similar to the tree with the bird in it. There's not really everything is similarly colored. This is obviously the subject, but it just doesn't stand out well enough. The different time of year, maybe these would have been more mottled color. Maybe in the spring, there would have been flowers here. Maybe in the fall, there would have been some dead and dying leaves, would have been orange and reds. So come back at a different time of year if possible. We do have some blown out stuff over here. So it's kind of it's just a difficult scene to shoot. Come back at a different time of year would be my best suggestion on that, if possible. This too, it's a nice scene. The light isn't perfect. The sky is very nice. In development, I would have liked to have seen you brought the sky out a little better. The sky is kind of the star of this shot, and it's kind of flat. When you developed it, I think you could have hopefully brought this more texture out in the sky so it looked more ominous. We got the tree over here. It's not really framing. You could cut off trees if you're framing things with them. Like, you have a tree over here and a tree over here, and you're framing something. You could cut out, by all means, you cut out the parts of the tree, so because it's acting as the frame to draw the user's attention, or the viewer's attention, towards the middle of the picture. In this case, it's kind of just here, and it's kind of partly cut off over here. It's all the same color. Again, I keep saying different time of year. Again, I don't know the situation. Maybe Jetmir was on vacation and, was just here in this part of this country for one day and couldn't have got this shot any other time. That's possible, and you just do the best you can. And, different time of year, different, more color in this bushes here. Shot maybe more this way, so this whole tree was in the shot, or more that way, so the tree was out of the shot. And in processing, do something to get that sky to be more pronounced. This shot I like a lot. Again, we got a very blue sky. It's a little over processed because of this glow. See that glow? So you want to tone that back a little bit so you don't have that glow anymore. You also do still have some blown out highlights, and you have some areas here that are black, that are clip black. So you want to try to pull that in a little bit so you don't have these blown out areas anymore. You want to tone the sky back a little bit so you don't have this glow anymore. The composition itself is very nice. You have this foreground interest. It's a tiny bit blurry. Let's see if we know your lens. No, it doesn't say what lens you used. Typically, you'd like to use a really wide angle lens, like 18 millimeter, 20 millimeter, and focus. You can use hyperfocal distance. That's when you usually use an app on a smartphone, and you put in what aperture you're using. Let's say f/16, and it will tell you where to focus so that most of the picture is in focus from front to back. So in that case, if I was shooting, I don't really shoot using hyperfocal distance. To me it's just a pain in the butt, pulling out my phone trying to figure out the thing. I would focus right here. I would use probably a 20 millimeter lens, focus right here, and I would have shot at f11, f16 in there somewhere. I would have probably tried a few of them, one at f11 and one at f16, and I would have varied my focal. I maybe would have focused here, then I would have focused here, tried different ones, and took the shot, and it hopefully got this a little more crisp in the foreground and still keep the very nice focus in the background. The other thing in post-processing I would have suggested is try to get this more color in these rocks. There's color there. You just got to tease it out with Lightroom, and it would have been a really very strong image. As it is, it's a great composition. He did a real nice job composing the shot. And this is the last shot. This is actually an iPhone shot, and this, in simplistic terms, it's a very nice shot. You have foreground interest, this melon here. You have midground interest, this water spout, and you have background interest. So it's a really nice shot. And you have even kind of parallel lines and leading lines. If it was any longer, you'd have receding lines. But it's a really nice shot, done with an iPhone. So very nice shot. And I'd like to thank Jetmir for sending me in his work. He's a very fine photographer, and he'd made the best of scenes that were, typically, the light wasn't best, but he did a really good job of, taking making the shot as good as possible given what he was, presented with. So, that's what we all could take away from this critique, is sometimes the stars don't align and you don't get the best lighting, you don't get the best skies, you don't get the best, of all these things coming together, but you still use all your skills to try to bring the shot, make the shot you're going to take the best it could be. And Jetmir definitely did that, and I appreciate him sending me in his photos. So I'd like to thank everyone who has sent me in some critique work to do. Just as I reiterate from previous critiques, is I'm really behind. Everyone's 2 to 3, 4 weeks even. So I'll get to them. I'm doing them in the order I've received them, and I appreciate everyone sending them to me to do, and I appreciate everyone's patience. So everyone, take care.